got two very esteemed guests with us, Dr. Charan, the noted management consultant and guru. Thanks so much for joining us on the show. And Mr. Analjit Singh, chairman of the Max India Group, needs no introduction on ET now. Dr. Charan, can't help but starting to ask you this question, since you've come after what are unprecedented times in the global economy, in the US in particular. How did it all happen, and where do we go from here? What do leaders and managers do in this unprecedented environment?
Well, the first thing is that leaders take advantage of the crisis in the sense that they have to have a defiant spirit to come out stronger. Do not feel victimized, focus on the reality, inspire other people, and then prepare to go through the fog and become better. That is the challenge of leadership.
What are some of the lessons that they can take from this downturn and some of the events that led to it?
Well, there are three lessons, and these lessons apply to all leaders. The first one is that a good leader first try to understand what are the root causes of the downturn. They really need to understand that it is a different kind of a downturn than before. Number two is that in this lesson, nothing is more important than people. This is the time to protect your people, train your people, make sure they understand what's happening. And number three is that while you're going to survive in the short run, you build for the future. It's a spectrum. Some people have difficulty financially, so there they need to do what I said. But there were others whose financial sheets were very good, and they see this as an opportunity.
In the 2 days we've spent together, strategy session with the Max India Group, innumerable times Dr. Charan has emphasized the importance of discipline, values, leadership, avoiding excesses, and thereby building trust. And it's fair to say that some of these problems that we are living through today, particularly in the Western world, have arisen because of those things.
Yes.
So that's therefore it's sort of root cause back to leadership again.
Right. I'm going to pick your brain on that trust issue a little later, but first on the recession, when you see such big names fall, and in particular a leading player in the insurance industry like AIG, that's an industry you are in, and when you see the biggest company in that sector go down, were you slightly puzzled or disappointed? Did you study that? What went wrong there in your opinion?
Well, I'm personally very fortunate, because we picked our partner, New York Life, which considers itself as a life insurance expert. It is not a stock company, it is a mutual company, and life insurance is all it has done for 162 years.
So they didn't get into trading fancy derivatives?
As a matter of fact, they not only didn't get into structured products, derivatives and mortgage markets and housing loans and so on and so forth, but that is one life insurance company whose ratings have gone up in the last 6 months. And of course nobody knew we would be in such a situation, but going back to 1999-2000, it was a very concerted move and effort on the part of Max to find a pure life player. And that's also what we've done in our health insurance sector, where we've picked Bupa, and all Bupa does is home care and life insurance, and that's what they've done for about 100 years.
So was that pick inspired by what happened at AIG, or were you heading towards that?
Max New York Life relationship goes back to 2000.
Right.
So the Bupa part goes back to 18 months ago. So right. It was not inspired about that. So I think it goes back to what Dr. Charan always teaches and professes, which is make your choices carefully and pick your choices very carefully. See and decide very, very carefully as to who you are and what you want to be, and therefore New York Life and therefore Bupa.
Right. Dr. Charan, you've been talking about running businesses in turbulent times. Your latest book mentions some very basic things like you've talked about daily cash flows and understanding customers. These are basics that you somehow feel maybe some of the bigger companies lost sight of?
I think managing a business is managing basics. You have every business very complex. You've got to reduce to the basics, regroup them, drive it. So what has happened in many situations is that those basics have been not given enough attention to it. In the case of AIG, the concentration of risk became too great. People paid no attention to the system. Concentration of risk. Right? The basic got overlooked.
Do you feel a lot of big CEOs, especially the chairman level, when you're just looking at acquisitions and getting your financial results out quarter on quarter, sometimes you could be guilty of losing sight of the basics, understanding the basics of the business?
Sure. The point is that there's dependency on large teams of people, particularly in newer businesses, larger businesses, where competitive landscape makes life very difficult, and there's always pressure of one kind or another, a lot of firefighting to do, and so on and so forth. Certainly, some attention to basics does get compromised. And I think that's why you need a conscience keeper. That's why when we talk about migrating to becoming a board managed company, it's not as if the board is going to run the business or operate the business, but the quality of people you have on the board, and that's the whole point of governance, is that's the reality check. When people come in and ask you the hard questions, put you on the spot, and through a very open, transparent, honest exercise, you have to respond. And I think those are the things that keeps you on your toes.
It's interesting you brought up boards, because a lot of people feel that one of the reasons that corporate greed just got out of control leading up to this recession was that boards and investors in particular just reacted too late. Would you agree to that?
Well, I think there are many reasons for the recession. And the key part of recession is the breakdown in the system of the financial side. That's where it all began. It causes recessions in the rest of the main street. And here is not just the greed, not just the wrong compensation system. It is a concentration of risk that got overlooked by a number of regulatory agencies. And that's the major reason for it.
But as a first, barrier, do you think that boards need to be slightly more proactive in these times?
Well, I can inform you on the American side, and I've been doing some work for almost 100 directors, and that they are getting very active. This is a good news. We're starting in the last year,
Right.
And the compensation systems will change.
We have a debate in India as well about boards and about independent directors, where people feel they're never really independent. What's your take on that?
My take is exactly on the same lines. I can see a discernible difference at our boards. I serve on 5 very, very prestigious boards. Attendance of directors has become near 100%. Nobody is asleep. Everybody is awake at the board meetings. People come more prepared, better having read the materials and done some homework. People come prepared with questions. They want to know. The duration of board meetings is getting longer. I've seen that change since October of last year. So clearly the message is out there, and the red lights and the orange lights are on to say, companies, CEOs, boards, wake up and respect the basics, and we're going to ask. And that's the whole point of the board. I was asked by a competitor channel of yours as to how much a CEO or the chairman actually influences the efficacy or the productivity of the board. And I said a lot, because if you want to make a hash of it or a wash of it, chairman and CEO can get away with it.
And we've seen that in the case of Satyam recently, in our country in particular, that you can get around the system however strong the board is. How do you manage that scenario?
Well, let me give you an example in the same field. There's a company called Cognizant. That board, and I attend that once a year, they actually have customers come for 4 hours by invitation. It's a 4-hour session between the board and the customers, and it's absolutely give and take, what's right, what's not, and that influences what happens in the company. And so here is the board very interested in where the customer feedback is.
Something you might want to consider?
Indeed. So in the similar regard, I think the farthest we have done, quite frankly, is mystery shopping.
Right.
But I think this is going one step beyond mystery shopping, is to actually involve real life customers, and also customers of your competition, to come to the board level and openly talk and give feedback about their experience.